Hi, you. It's me, Nicole Phoenix Star, and this is the Nick Star podcast. I was waiting to get the kind of pull to what I was going to talk about this week, and dropped in this morning when I was on Instagram, and this guy that I follow was talking about a near-death experience he had through dengue fever, and I was flung back to my dengue fever journey in 2022 and the near-death experience that I had during my experience. And yeah, like I hadn't really kind of reviewed that on the same levels as I did earlier today. It really took me on quite a journey. And in all of this, I realized that I've had two other quite significant near-death experiences as well. And he was talking about his dengue fever being his third and all these parallels. Anyway, I had gone to Bali. It was still COVID, but it was one of the least lockdown times. But I was living in Australia, being an Australian being an Australian citizen, but I was also held a resident visa in Indonesia, which allowed me the capacity to travel back and forth, which most people couldn't do. And I had to go back because I was selling my house in Bali, and I contracted dengue fever on my way out. And arriving back, I just was deteriorating quite quickly, and going to the doctors, dengue fever not being a very common thing was never on the radar. And eventually I was able to get into a regular doctor who was Sri Lankan and had done a lot of his training in dengue tents in Sri Lanka, and he recognized it straight away. And because my eyes were starting to really go into dengue eyes, and he said to me, "Can you please go to hospital right now?" And I said, "I can't go right now because I had to organize my son, and there was just these other clunky things going on." I said, "I'll go in the morning." And he actually started crying and said, "Please go because you are getting close to death." And he said, "My best friend died in my arms of dengue fever, and you really need to go to hospital." And I said, "Okay." So yeah, I know dengue fever is really fascinating. It kind of waves until it completely takes you down, and the fevers are so wild and the headaches are so piercing and your bones just ache so much. And essentially your kind of blood boils from the inside until the fever takes you. Anyway, they actually put me in the COVID ward, in the infectious diseases ward, because they had to send the test to Sydney because they had no dengue test facilities in South Australia or anywhere closer to until I was like diagnosed officially. I was still unknown and could be infectious, even though I knew I wasn't. I had nursed my son Harley through dengue, and it was exactly the same. And I'd seen many people go through it in my time in Indonesia. Anyway, it was about day 9 or 10, which is way too far in, when I was finally diagnosed from when I returned from Indonesia. And it was fascinating. I was in this room where they had put a drip on me, and then at one stage these two nursing staff ran in and ripped it out and said, "We just gave you the wrong medicine." And I said, "Okay." And they just looked so scared. Um, because they had never dealt with dengue fever, and one of them didn't even really know anything about it. And they were Googling how to treat it and what to do because no one in the hospital had any idea what to do. Anyway, I'd been in ICU for 3 days, and I had this and they weren't able to stabilize my platelets. And that's the thing. You need to stabilize your blood platelets to get out the other side. And each time they came in to check on me, fully suited up, because although I wasn't infectious, I was in the COVID ward and they were seeing COVID patients. They were all suited up, and they just were on their own crazy journey because they'd never seen a dengue person before, especially someone in such hanging in between the veils as I was. And I recall I was laying down. I felt like my head was on an angle lower than my body, like I was kind of hanging backwards a bit. And I felt like I woke up, but I couldn't move my body. I couldn't open my eyes. And I was in 2007. And it was such a wild experience because, to be honest, I felt like I was having a bad trip. And I couldn't get out of a time loop. But the whole comprehension was, and obviously I was deranged in fever, but I was in 2007. I couldn't move, and I wasn't aware that it was 2022, but I also knew on some level that it wasn't 2007, although I was in 2007. But 2022 and being in hospital wasn't part of the picture. I don't know. It was like I was in the in-betweens with no awareness of a timeline, experiencing 2007 and I was able to have full consciousness, but my body was not responding. I couldn't move. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't do anything. And I didn't panic. I just felt like I was on a quest, which is a bit like, shamanic journeying, which now kind of talking it out is exactly what it was, because I've had this experience several times in my life, like kind of going into shamanic journeying, and I wasn't chilled or like, woohoo, let's go on a shamanic journey. I was like very aware that my body wasn't moving. I couldn't open my eyes, and I was stuck in some loop, and I didn't know how to get out. And so there was this tension, and I needed to crawl my way back, or crawl my way through, or just keep moving through the journey. And because, the medical staff weren't in and out regularly, like, I don't know, you probably only had 2, maybe 3 visits a day, because that's what happened in the COVID ward. And I don't know how long I was in this state, but eventually I was able to kind of reconnect in with my body, and I was able to move my fingers for a little while, and then eventually I came back, and in concept of time, I'd remembered someone coming in around 9 with breakfast, and the next time I looked, it was after 2. And I don't know, just having this review of that this morning, I was able to kind of go back and recall some of the content and context of, the shamanic journey, and crawling my way out of 2007, and recognizing that, that was quite a pivotal state where I'd almost scalped myself and cut my head open on Christmas Day. Okay. Another epic injury. And I guess, there was a car incident that was a near-death experience that was amplified into this whole other thing. And anyway, just the whole point of what I'm kind of talking about is, there's these markers in life that are really intense, and they are just huge gateways. And I see so many people getting stuck in their trauma and stuck in kind of different experiences in their life where they just relive them by either rehashing them or retelling them, and never actually stepping through the threshold of the opportunities into the evolution of the lived experience. And these things don't have to be massive and extreme and incredibly painful and all of that, although they quite often are. but in all sorts of random guises, and just, I don't know, like, there is so much rejection of hard stuff, and there's so much, guidance to not process and go into them and to feel them in their depths. We want to numb them and push them away and just be happy, and how unhelpful all of that is. People feel like they're going to break if they go into their most painful things, and it's such a statement these days of, the fear of going crazy and the fear of breaking, and it's, not having the time or even the luxury to be able to fall apart. I'm not quite sure why it's so bastardized these days, because it is the least effective way to navigate the human life. We created a photo with one of my students who's just spent 2 months in immersion with me the other day on a balcony overlooking the ocean, because she'd found a photo of us early in 2023 when we were both quite at effect of perimenopause and all the symptoms that arise, and we have both had really profound journeys since then. And we recreated the photo, and I don't know, we had this conversation about, like, who even were those women? I've had one of the most transformational years of my life, and that says a lot for me, especially if you've been around for a minute. And again, anyone who knows me knows that I run at life, I run at evolution, and I run at the hard stuff. It's the most effective form of evolution. Yeah, it's just, and there always has been some part of me, living on the edge and being willingness to go in, and sometimes that can lead to some very near-death experiences. Although dengue was not the result of an extreme kind of way of living life. It was just a tiny little mosquito in a beautiful resort. I know exactly where I got bit. There was, it was rainy season, the end of, and I was staying in this beautiful resort, and there was like lots of little water features everywhere. And yeah, I know exactly where I was bit. It's fascinating because when I came out of the dengue journey, I within 2 weeks got COVID, which was really fascinating, with a completely blown up immune system from fighting from the edges of death of dengue into COVID. I navigated it quite well, which was helpful. But, the amplified perimenopause symptoms in the middle of that, within, I don't know, a month, I'd lost 2/3 of my hair, which is both a perimenopause and a dengue soup symptom. And now I have big, thick, I've got, my hair right now is extraordinary. It's probably the thickest and healthiest it's been since before I had children. It's, it's, and I do take hair, skin and nails supplements fairly regularly, and after I lost my hair, I double dosed on them, just, over the counter ones, for about 6 months to rebuild. And your hair can be quite susceptible to instability in barley water. And my shower water wasn't filtered or premium, so to be able to build big, thick, healthy hair was quite the feat. Anyway, I've kind of been a bit of a, as I'm regularly known, butterfly brain, and jumping all over topics and subjects in this conversation, but that's how I roll. One thing leads to another, and quite often we bring it back around. I don't know why linear thought or linear conversation seems to have some hierarchical aspiration, jumping around all sorts of subjects and, being smacked with an ADHD label. I think it's just humans. Not that I've ever been called ADHD. I get called butterfly brain, but I see people, going, "Oh, it's just my ADHD brain." I'm like, "Oh, it's pretty normal to me. It's just following the energy of the conversation and the topic. I think this idea of linear trajectory conversation and thought threads comes from schooling and systemizing. And I think the creative mind is one that goes where it needs to go. So, all right, well, here we are. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, this time of year really does send me into a whole lot of spontaneous review moments, and reviewing the potency of near-death experiences this morning was beautiful. And revisiting shamanic journeying through either extreme fevers or kind of intense and often traumatic events over my life was a beautiful little moment I had this morning. Yeah, those shamanic journeys which spontaneously happen from being so stretched and so uncomfortable, and you just get thrust into an awareness of consciousness and an experience that the mind doesn't see or recognize as familiar. And we can experience kind of a far more multi-dimensional moment, because we aren't viewing things 2D or 3D through our learned mind-controlled safe space. So drop all those seeds in, and see where that goes for you. All right, my love, that's all I got this week. Last couple of weeks of 2024. I'm starting some review calls with people this week, and I guess that's why this has spontaneously happened a little bit. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to share this with anyone that you may feel could get some benefit or just like to listen. Go and check out my website, www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. I do have some call spots open if anyone wants to have a chat. And I am dropping in a couple of new programs over the next few weeks. That's all I got. Bye for now. Mwah.